A reading from John 19, verses 25 through 27. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. This is the gospel of the Lord. So last week we were witnesses to a great act of mercy. A thief asked Jesus to remember him when he is in paradise, and Jesus consoles him, saying, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Jesus elevates him. He gives him hope. Not only will he be in paradise, but he will be with Jesus, the King of glory, the Prince of peace, and the Lord of lords. Even though he hangs there on the cross, he can breathe because he knows that his pain will not have the last word. Now we find ourselves before a slightly different scenario. It's Mary now who cries at the foot of the cross while her son hangs innocent, beaten, and crushed by an unjust system. I'd like us to keep in mind that she is not like the rest of the onlookers. She has not only heard of Jesus, of his miracles and proclamations, she has not been rescued and liberated like Mary Magdalene. She's not carried the guilt of betraying Jesus as did Peter, or did she abandon him the night before as did the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. She is much less like those who have condemned Jesus to a cruel and inhumane death. Mary is at the foot of the cross as a mother, as the one who remembers him moving in her womb, who remembers his first steps, his tantrums, his disappearing acts to the temple. She remembers his passion for teaching, for preaching, and advocating for the poor and disinherited. Mary is at the foot of the cross, loving him like no other in that space. And in the same way, her pain is like no other in that space or in all of time. With this in mind, what she has to process and hear now from her beloved son, in my opinion, is quite cold and insensitive. Jesus says, "Woman, here is your son." And he says to his disciple, "Here is your mother." I read these words as cold and insensitive because although I am not a mother, I am a daughter. And God forbid I were in my deathbed accompanied by my parents and it occurred to me to point to a family friend and say, "Mom, Dad, yes, I'm dying here, but here is your daughter." And then pointing to my friend and say, "Friend, here are your parents." If it occurred to me to do something like that, there would be some problems. First of all, my father would press his eyebrows and say, "¿Qué tú dices?" which loosely translates to, "What did you just say?" And my mother, well, she would be so offended, she would say, "Are you serious? How dare you? You are my daughter. No one can replace you." I think that even though the text doesn't say so, Mary may have had a similar reaction. I suffered the imposed shame for being pregnant out of wedlock to obey the one who sent you. I gave birth to you. I bathed you. I dressed you. I loved you with all of me. And you tell me, "Woman, here is your son"? You are my son. There is no one that can replace you. People of God, Mary did everything right. She was obedient, and she was faithful, and she was loyal, and she was a servant and a worshiper. And even though she led an ideal and a holy life, here she is, suffering an incomparable pain. I believe there are seasons in our lives where we are arrested by pain and heartache, where we suffer the death of what we treasure most, maybe a family member, maybe our health, when one day everything changes and it feels as though our bodies have betrayed us. We may even mourn the death of our dreams and our ambitions, the ones that we've placed before ourselves and even for our children. We may even suffer the death of faithful marriages, of significant friendships and relationships. And in any case, in some cases, it could very well be that these heartaches have nothing to do with what we did or what we left undone. Instead, they are an indication that we are alive, that we breathe and we feel, and in this feeling skin, we walk in a messy world that feeds and nurtures every season of our lives. You may have experienced this. You know the times when we've fallen and the world seems to want to keep us down, or the times we gain the courage to spring back up and somehow the world gives us wings and ways to fly higher. And then those times of summer bliss when the world gives us reason to bask and bathe in the sun. And then there are those times of bitter cold and how the world threatens to harden our hearts. The world we live in feeds the sweet and bitter seasons of our lives, which is why Jesus knew to say, in the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. The good news in this text, in this, the third word from the cross, is that even though Jesus' words to his mother Mary seem cold and insensitive to my contemporary ears, these words were, in the truest sense, words of great compassion and love. It's how Jesus affirms his previous words. In the world you will face persecution. Mother, I am tortured on a cross. I am agonizing and I am crucified. This is really happening and I won't give you any false expectations. I will die on this cross today and you will suffer my death. But take courage. I have conquered the world and I will provide for you. We know that in Jesus' time and context, women were maintained by their husbands, and should they widow, their sons would become providers for the home. Scholars suspect that since Joseph was not mentioned in any of the crucifixion narratives, that Joseph was deceased when Jesus speaks these words to Mary. And so from the cross, Jesus assumes his responsibility as son and provider. He loves her. She is mom, and she is the daughter of the Most High. She's beloved and will not be disinherited. Jesus will not promise her liberation of her pain and heartache, but instead, he will speak truth that transcends systemic negotiations. Truth that Mary can hear in her soul, in her very being, in her spirit, in the womb that held his incarnation. Truth that transcends context and time and space. Truth that belongs to you and to me as well. In the world, you will face persecution and pain. You will endure heartbreak and disappointment. But take courage. I have conquered the world. I am your provider. I love you. You are not alone. Thanks be to God.